इससे पहले कि मैं इस वीडियो में जाऊं, I just want to say that I was really looking forward to Anthem. Generally मैं इस तरह की वीडियोस करता नहीं हूँ. What I do is more of is it for you video, which is basically me sitting down and talking about कि ये गेम है क्या and is this game for you or not. But जिस स्टेट में Anthem अभी है, I cannot recommend it to anybody. So instead, what I would like to do is go deeper to explain why I feel Anthem fails and to explain some of the core issues with Anthem, like the boring combat system, to its technical flaws, to its awful loading screens, to its shallow loot systems. I would also like to talk about the lackluster story, the presence of non-existent endgame, and the lack of good progression system, and having no PvP, which is disastrous for a game like this. कुछ issues इतने deep हैं इसके that I feel to fix them would mean that you need to rip out the game, tear it apart, and rebuild it again. So by the time I had finished writing my thoughts, I had written over 10,000 words. That means it would make for a really long video जो कोई नहीं देखेगा. So instead of one long video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it into 3-part essay videos, where पहले I would look at Anthem from a perspective of a Bioware game. Then second part video में I would look at Anthem from the perspective of what it wants to be, a live service looter shooter. And third, I would look at the bigger and the more deep-rooted problems of Anthem and its shaky future. So with that out of the way, let's look at Anthem from the perspective of a Bioware game and how it fails to be a Bioware game. अब Bioware जब अपने प्राइम पे था, it was not just a studio. It was not a studio that was there creating great games, but it was a very unique studio. It was a studio that created entire worlds. Mass Effect, Dragon Age, the lore of these games extended to books, comics, novels, anime.
You're not warriors, not yet. Today we find out what you're made of, Marine.
And Bioware used to tell these ever-expanding stories that spanned not just hundreds, but thousands of years. It was a studio that showed the world how to meld gameplay with story. With every subsequent release, Bioware tried to push themselves forward. They created more immersive games with much deeper gameplay mechanics. So Bioware was on this constant journey of creating more deeper, more immersive worlds. अब Bioware की शुरुआत कहाँ से हुई? They came to scene with Baldur's Gate. उन्होंने क्या किया था कि जो पेन एंड पेपर RPG था, जो टेबल टॉप RPG था, Dungeons and Dragons, उसको उठा के कंप्यूटर गेम फॉर्मेट में स्थगित किया था. And it took 20 years for something like Divinity Original Sin to come out that finally managed to rival Baldur's Gate. उसके बाद Bioware ventures into 3D and creates the spiritual successor to Baldur's Gate, which is Neverwinter Nights. Neverwinter Nights आज भी माना जाता है is one of the best RPGs ever created. उसके बाद Bioware goes ahead and creates this amazing Star Wars game that is considered to be the best Star Wars game ever created, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. And after that, Bioware finds success again with Jade Empire. But उसके बाद उनका focus shift हो गया. They just did not want to create just games, but create these ever-expanding worlds. So they created worlds like Dragon Age and Mass Effect. Dragon Age, till date, is one of the most lore-rich fantasy RPG ever created. And Mass Effect Trilogy, till date, is the best sci-fi space opera ever created. अब इन सब चीज़ों के दौरान, throughout all these iterations and the change in focus, one thing never changed. That was Bioware's commitment to tell great stories.
Well, you know, radiating joy and love while everyone has to face death and the blight and a bleak future.
Bioware जब अपने peak पे था, it represented the fullest expression of what video games were capable of as a medium. They showed the world how games could be truly personal by enabling gamers to create their own stories. So they did not just create stories, they enabled gamers कि वो अपनी story खुद लिख सकते हैं. Now मैं ये सारी चीज़ें आप लोगों को बता क्यों ना हूँ? क्योंकि जब आपके पास एक प्रोजेक्ट होता है that is 6 years in the making and it's been worked on by Bioware's A team, एंड जब उस प्रोजेक्ट के लिए समथिंग एज बिग, एज ह्यूज, एज कोलोसल एज मास इफेक्ट वाज गिवन टू द सैटेलाइट स्टूडियो जिसने आज तक कभी कोई गेम बनाई ही नहीं, then that means that the expectations from this project are going to be high. They're going to be extremely high. But in the end, Anthem's story at its best is just a decent story, and in its worst is a very badly written story. Now it starts off exceptionally well, and शुरू में ऐसा लगता है that Bioware is setting you for that signature Bioware experience. But then it quickly devolves into something that is unacceptable from a studio like Bioware. अब ऐसा नहीं है कि Anthem में कोई भी exciting concepts नहीं है. It has fantastic concepts. It's a story about gods, the tools of creations that were left behind by these gods. And कोई force है which is called Anthem of Creation that can be harnessed to reshape things. And कैसे ये force does not want to be controlled. And कैसे आपके पूर्वजों ने ये बड़ी cities और ये great walls बनाई हैं. Anthem के world में there are things that you do not fully understand. You've got interesting creatures, characters and monsters. You've got ciphers, you've got some sort of social hierarchy. And then you also have these different factions. And there are also these shadowy organizations. And आप रोल अदा करते हो एक freelancer का. Freelancers पहले were heroes. Now they have fallen from grace. Yet इनमें से कोई भी चीज़ें, whatever I have mentioned, these themes do not get properly fleshed out or are reflected in the world. How can you take something so exciting and make it so boring? I don't know. But Bioware has managed to do it. The plot is spread over and filled with repetitive grind missions. I mean literally आप सो जाओगे. अब हम बात करते हैं Anthem City की, जो हब है उसकी बात करते हैं. It is the most bland hub that I've ever seen. There is absolutely no personality. कोई हसल बसल नहीं है. थोड़े से NPCs हैं इधर उधर जो लगता है कि बात कर रहे हैं बट उनके सिर्फ लिप्स मूव कर रहे होते हैं. They are not creating any sound at all. कुछ NPCs that do end up talking, अगर आप उनको क्रॉस करते हो वो वही बात कर रहे होते हैं, सुबह भी वही बात कर रहे होते हैं, शाम को भी वही बात कर रहे होते हैं. इनफैक्ट 2 सेकंड आगे जाके वापस आओगे वही बात चल रही होगी. And they'll repeat that thing over and over again to a point आप कहोगे यार बस get me out of here please.
But where were the freelancers? Aren't they supposed to stop this kind of thing?
There wasn't enough time for them to reach the ambush site.
But where were the freelancers? Aren't they supposed to stop this kind of thing?
This city is nothing like what was shown in E3. E3 में जो city दिखाई थी, that was bustling with life, hustle bustle थी. There were things going on, there was trading going on, and there was a lot of noise, and it felt like it's a lived-in city. This city just feels empty and hollow. कुछ market dwellers हैं इधर उधर, bunch of market dwellers that are selling pots. वो भी पता नहीं कैसे एक दूसरे से बात तो कर नहीं रहे होते. जो आपकी भी थोड़ी बहुत ही कॉन्वर्सेशंस इन NPCs के साथ होती हैं, दे समटाइम्स बॉइल टू 2 डायलॉग चॉइसेस, दैट्स इट. एंड वो डायलॉग चॉइसेस भी ये हैं कि विच बैडली रिटन डायलॉग चॉइस यू वांट टू गेट सब्जेक्टेड टू. The delivery of all the dialogues is expressionless. I swear you would literally fall asleep. And dialogues may be कोई consistent tone नहीं है. You never really get to know whether this person is angry with me. You cannot even figure out where do you stand with this person. Does he like me or does he hate me? Which really does not matter क्योंकि NPCs don't matter in this game at all. They have absolutely no impact on your journey or your story. जब हम Mass Effect की बात करते हैं या ड्रैगन एज की बात करते हैं, द कॉन्वर्सेशन अमाउंटेड टू समथिंग. इट अफेक्टेड द गेम एज अ होल. जब मास इफेक्ट में आई एम टॉकिंग टू रेक्स, इट वाज नॉट जस्ट एनी अदर कॉन्वर्सेशन. इन फ्यूचर इट हैड गेम प्ले इम्प्लीकेशंस एंड आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू स्पॉइल एनीथिंग फॉर यू. जाके मास इफेक्ट खेलो. बेस्ड ऑन माई एक्शंस पीपल गॉट टू लिव और डाई. हेयर ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा क्या होगा, जो सिटी में पॉन्ड है वो प्रॉब्ली क्लीन अप हो जाएगा. In Dragon Age and Mass Effect, every NPC had their own agenda. They had their own motivation. And आप understand कर सकते थे उन motivations को. I knew Garrus is my brother in arms. He's always there for me to watch my back. I knew कि मैं कभी भी जाके लियारा से बात कर सकता हूँ. And Ash was as bitchy as always. Good looking, but bitchy. And Dragon Age Origins में I knew Alistair was this warm, fuzzy friend. And Liliana was the love of my life. Pure and gentle. And I knew कि Morrigan का तो पता ही नहीं चलता. So you never know what she's up to. इसका ध्यान रखो. So all these games had a certain sense of what it wanted to be. They had a personality. The city of Anthem feels more lifeless than even the world outside. At least बाहर जाके आप लोगों के साथ फुदक तो सकते हो, खेल सकते हो. Mass Effect का जो Citadel है, the hub world, that was created लगभग 12 साल पहले, and it had less NPCs than Anthem, but somehow it had more personality. It felt alive. As you walk through the Citadel, there were things that added to this world. There were bits and pieces that you got to know about this world. And जब आप लोगों से बात करते थे, किसी भी person से बात करते थे, they would add something to the lore of this world. यहाँ पे there's nothing that gets added to the world. And जब हम overall story की बात करते हैं,
I will end all this needless suffering.
It's one of the most generic stories ever. So you have some bad guys who are doing bad guy things for bad guy reasons, and you are a group of people that need to stop them. अब कहा जाता है कि every good story में एक अच्छा villain होना बहुत ज़रूरी होता है. I disagree. In a game like Anthem, there was no need of a villain. You could easily build on this mystery, these unknown forces जिसका आपको पता ही नहीं है. But because इसमें villain डाला गया है, so I need to talk about him. The villain is voice acted very well. He is calm, he is composed, he is confident. He's something like Thanos.
Show you? No. That's not how we conduct business. I find that pain is no substitute for money. So let's negotiate.
The relics, not for sale.
See, progress. You do have it.
The only difference is where I could understand कि Thanos की motivations क्या हैं and I could relate to it, I cannot relate to the motivations of this villain. अब आप बोलोगे कि why are you talking about Anthem's story? This is not that type of a game. Bioware has tried to do something different here. Well, I disagree. Because Bioware ने constantly कहा है और claim किया है that Anthem is going to have their signature story, their signature Bioware touch. And clearly, Bioware has tried to shoehorn a story here.
Back within the safety of Fort Tarsus is where my story begins. This is your chance to develop a richly personal narrative where your choices have consequences. In this bustling trader town, you'll develop bonds with your pit crew who can help you prepare for future battles. They're the people in the world who have your back. And as your relationships develop, you'll learn about their pasts and the future they hope to see. Fort Tarsus is ripe for exploration as well. You may even encounter shadowy figures with questionable character. It all depends on the decisions you make. This is real-time storytelling, a reinvention of personal narrative in a multiplayer game.
अगर आप देखोगे, the game is divided into two parts. Everything story related happens in this hub world, जहाँ पे everything is seen through this first person perspective. So you can sit over there, stare into the lifeless eyes of the NPC and reflect back on the life choices while they are just going to tell you stories about themselves and utter nonsense that add nothing to the story. एक तो कैमरे का choice ही गलत है. When you have so many flaws, then every flaw becomes more visible when you give a first person perspective. और अगर हम missions की भी बात करें और mission structures की भी बात करें, there's nothing exciting that happens. The world looks amazing even after the massive downgrade of what was shown to us. But एक बार जब आपकी shine चली जाती है, it wanes out, the world feels barren and empty with no variety whatsoever. आप लेके चलो कि Anthem की कोई भी footage आप निकाल के देख लो, I swear it will feel like it's happening in the same place. And this is supposed to be a world that has been created by Bioware, the masters of world building. Even Destiny 1 में भी there were different planets. And even in Division 1 वो एक city था, but still that city had more variety than Anthem. And I just don't like कि जैसे ये missions चल रहे होते हैं, you're constantly being juggled between your inside and outside locations. It just breaks the immersion. And इनके बीच में ना loading screens बार बार जो आती हैं, that creates not just annoyance but also breaks the immersion. Nothing is more immersion breaking than load screen. Mission finished, load screen. Mission started, load screen. You reach an indoor area, load screen. You did not reach your teammates on time, loading screen to teleport you. You left the mission area, loading screen. आपने weapon change करना है, loading screen. You want to customize your javelin, loading screen. I mean, मेरे को ऐसा लगता है कि गेम कम है, लोडिंग स्क्रीन ज़्यादा है. इट वॉज अ अनॉयंस. अब डिवीजन को अगर हम देखें, डिवीजन लोड्स द फुल सिटी, फुल PvP, डार्क जोन, ऑल द हब एरियाज इन जस्ट वन गो. वर्ल्ड ऑफ वॉरक्राफ्ट जो आज से 15 साल पहले निकल के आई थी एंड हैड अ मच बिगर स्कोप, all that world, that massive area of Azeroth was seamlessly loaded, and that is the one thing that all the reviewers out there pointed out.
One of the most striking things about World of Warcraft is that the game takes place in this incredibly huge and seamless world. There aren't any real loading times here at all, and in fact, just getting from your desktop and into the game is a process that just takes seconds. Basically, you can run around through the world and watch as the scenery changes, as the weather changes, as the lighting changes. All this stuff just happens all around you, and the whole thing just feels so cohesive and is so rich with detail that you really do feel like you're in this other place.
It would be okay if in case story missions were exceptionally good, but they are one and the same thing repeated over and over again. एक story mission तो इस तरह structured था that it felt like you're grinding for an achievement or something. Kill X number of these, harvest X number of these items, and it was the most soul-crushing, repetitive and grinding mission of this game. And after hours and hours of grinding, आपको मिलता क्या? You open these tombs up and nothing, no boss, no good loot, and वहीं पे आपकी ज़ील जो है पूरी टूट जाती है कि ये गेम में खेल भी क्यों रहा हूँ. ये चीज़ें इतनी बुरी नहीं होती if the core gameplay was super engaging and the world was exciting to explore, but it is not. Even though the flying mechanics are super well done. In the next video, we will elaborate on the mission structuring. We'll talk about the core gameplay mechanics, the combat, and the loot system of Anthem. We will also briefly touch upon its endgame. I would like to conclude my thoughts by saying that I'm not against change. I'm not saying that Bioware should stick to what they've been doing. Heck, Final Fantasy changed so many times, from being just sprites to being 3D, from a stylistic look to a more realistic look, from turn-based battle system to a real-time battle system, from bright colors to muted browns, from fantasy to steampunk to futuristic, from light-hearted to heartfelt romance to complete hopelessness, from being completely single-player to having some multiplayer elements to being an MMORPG, from diverse companions to an all-boys band. But even through all these changes and iterations, to even some highly controversial tonal shifts, you are at least assured of one thing, that you could always expect a magical, fantastical journey. And like a Final Fantasy game, whenever you picked up a Bioware game, there was this certain expectation and a standard associated with it. No matter if you picked up a hardcore RPG like Baldur's Gate or a fun offbeat product like MDK2, you knew somewhere in it you will find the fingerprints of Bioware, its DNA, its true spirit. But with Anthem, that spirit is sadly gone. The spirit known as the Bioware spirit.